JJ Humphrey. We're back on Elephant in the Room, where we talk about what nobody else wants to talk about. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest. Michelle, it is great to have you. We're very honored to have you. Guys, Michelle has been on Fox quite often, as well as Newsmax and many other media outlets, so she's very well known. She is a super investigator. And as always, we've got our good friend, Bobby Cleveland, with us today. Bob, before we take off, I just want to tell you what my pet peeve is today. Not a pet peeve. I tell you what, I'm getting fired up and I'm getting ticked off about all these judges. I got judges in this Payne County Grand Jury case that they violate the law like it's no, they don't even have the decency to do it in the back alley. They go right out on Main Street, blatantly violate the law. They do it like we're too stupid to even understand. And you don't even have to understand the law. If you have an ounce of good sense and an ounce of moral turpitude, then guess what? You know that what these people are doing is egregious. It's egregious. It's illegal. And it's about time that we start calling them out on it. So, Bob, that's my rant today. So that's where we're at.
JJ, I think that's a really good cause you got there, because I know that you really have nothing else to do. And
yeah, Bob, I'm really just bored to death. I'm driving all over the state. I went to Woodward, Lawton, Stillwater, Broken Arrow, and Claremore last week. So,
and not in one day though.
Not all in one day. No, not all.
That's a lot of driving.
I'm driving my life away. I'm like, what's that old boy you sing? I'm driving my life away. Or Johnny Cash, I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get into it. We've got really more than we can discuss today. So, Michelle, one of the things that, if you will, share with us, how in the world did a reporter that reports on national stuff and lives in a few places, I think Colorado may be home base, but tell us how you got involved in Oklahoma cases and what got you involved and where you're at right now on all that.
You bet, JJ. First, I want to say thank you to you and Bobby. It has been a pleasure getting to watch your show and knowing that out in the heartland, there are actually stand-up individuals who really do care about fighting corruption and defending the Constitution, integrity, the rule of law. It's quite depressing, the journey that I've had over the last 30 years. And for people who know me, they know that I have been a proud conservative, have voted Republican almost for my entire life, except for one short interlude when I voted for Harry Brown as a libertarian when I'm young. If you're not going through a short libertarian period when you're in your 20s, you're probably doing something wrong. But I have dedicated the last 3 decades to doing investigative journalism and also traveling all across the country, telling stories that I don't believe have been told well or truthfully by most of the elite media. So in 2016, when I had a documentary series for an outfit called CRTV, I was in the midst of mostly covering the national election campaign, as most media personalities and conservative journalists like myself were. But I kept getting bombarded with emails from folks in Enid who knew the family of Daniel Holtzclaw, who is I believe, thoroughly wrongfully convicted former Oklahoma City police officer, grew up in Enid, but had initially been who lived in Guam. His dad was in the military, both parents, mom and dad, former law enforcement, mom from Japan, and Kumiko, and dad, Eric, from Oklahoma. The sister of Daniel Holtzclaw, Jenny Holtzclaw, is a force of nature and has refused to give up on the fight to clear her brother's name. It was an insane case, JJ and Bobby, that really was born of that conflagration summer of 2014, when so many cities were being set on fire as part of so-called civil unrest that was really top-down type of agitation. And over the course of my career, I've seen these types of so-called riots erupt, never coincidentally or spontaneously, and unfortunately Oklahoma City was one of the targets of all that. And it was in that environment that Daniel happened during a traffic stop upon a woman who decided that she was going to level ridiculous accusations of a sexual assault. Unfortunately, at that time, in this late night traffic stop in June 2014, Daniel did not have a body cam. No police officers did at that time, because it wasn't until later, until that literally life-saving technology was introduced. And I'm not going to go into all of the details, but you can read so much of the evidence of the case at a website called freedanielholtzclaw.com, as well as watch the multi-part documentary series that I did on it for CRTV, which is still on YouTube at my channel at Michelle Malkin. Everything that I say, just like you gentlemen, is backed up by facts, evidence, and documentation. So I was there last week after doing this almost nearly a decade for the wrongful conviction anniversary, 10th anniversary of Daniel's conviction, along with the family and advocates and his post-conviction lawyer, Ben Munda. Over the last 10 years, we've been able to forge a very remarkable coalition, much like the coalition that has coalesced around Richard Glossop and many other wrongfully convicted Oklahomans. It's a long history. We've talked and alluded to it in our remarks last week, JJ, and in many of our own long conversations about this, a long history of unfinished business. And the strange coalition, yes, strange bedfellows, but earnest ones nonetheless, come from the left, the right, and the center of people who recognize the same patterns of misconduct. So that's the sort of shorter, long version of how I got into this. And after 30 years doing newspaper columns, writing 7 books, and as you said, appearing on Fox and Newsmax and every other mainstream outlet, C-SPAN, everywhere, I've taken a turn in my career where I now do this type of wrongful conviction research pro bono. In fact, I'm not quite the opposite, and I'm sure it's the same with you gentlemen. I'm not making a penny off of this. If anything, I've lost a lot of money traveling back and forth, doing things volunteer, and trying to help out people who certainly don't have the means that I've been blessed to have over the last 30 years as a result of my own career.
How many trials did the officer have?
Daniel Holtzclaw.
So Daniel Holtzclaw went through his trial in 2016. He was convicted before that, 2015. He was convicted December 10th, 2015. So he had one trial. Then he went through the direct appeal, which was denied by the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. And we can get into just all of the shenanigans with that. But what is most notable, and I think what has caused the most consternation among First Amendment, due process, and exoneration specialists was a set of so-called secret hearings that were conducted in June 2017 under the jurisdiction of the disgraced former Oklahoma County District Court Judge Timothy Henderson, who at the very time that he was overseeing this illegal ex parte secret hearing to cover up the forensic work record of the analyst in Daniel's case and many others that of defendants who have no idea what might have been at play. At that very time, as you all know, and JJ, credit to you for going after this Henderson when no few others would, he was sleeping with assistant district attorneys in the sex crimes unit as he was overseeing these illegal hearings, which were completely rigged, where all government actors were involved. And Daniel's lawyer and Daniel were denied even notice of the hearings. The poor lawyer, who was an OIDS lawyer, right, from the Oklahoma Indigent Defense Services, didn't even know the hearings were happening until he read about it in the media.
Well, and let's just stop right there, because boy, we got a lot. You got a lot to unpack right there that I don't think people really, and I want to dive a little bit deeper. So here's the thing, guys. What you need to understand, and when we had this rally the other day on Daniel declaring, hey, that we still believe he's innocent, guys, I put that out. I put a post out on that. Man, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of comments I got on there. I appreciate everybody's comments. I don't mind the comments that are negative. Most of them were pretty, even the ones that were against him were very respectful, and that's the way it should be. I understand people who believe, hey, he's had so many hearings, he had so many witnesses, how could all these people be lying? And so, again, that's what we want to dive into real quick, and then we want to talk about a few other cases going on. But, one of the things that you were talking about is evidence that we don't go forward. None of us right here go forward. And Bob can tell you, when we first met, man, I was like, Bob, we can't go out with this. Bob, we can't go out with this. We got to verify this. We got to verify this. We got to verify this. And the stuff that me and Bob had worked on, for the last 6 years, probably, Bob, somewhere like that. Hey, we have documented so many gross negligent things in the prison system, wrongful arrests, wrongful deaths. Most of ours has been in prison. A lot of mine has been prison, DHS, and the court system. But the thing that we always look for is evidence and patterns. And so one of the patterns that you see in this is we'll go back to Bob Macy. So the Bob Macy days, and we all know that Bob Macy had many cases turned over, and that his forensic scientist, forensic person, what would you call them?
Forensic analyst, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, analyst, scientist. Okay, that person was named Gilchrist, and we know that it has been documented that Macy and Gilchrist altered, tampered, destroyed evidence. Now, would I be wrong in that, Michelle? You've done a lot of research on that. Is that giving it a fair, or would you have more to add on that?
Yes, there's a long, sordid track record, a wretched record of wrongful convictions that has blossomed over the last 25 years. And Joyce Gilchrist, who was known notoriously as Black Magic, by the way, a nickname that she relished so much that she bragged about it in a 2001 CBS News segment on 60 Minutes. She loved this nickname, and she was a darling of Bob Macy, hang 'em high prosecutor, of course, one of the most notorious of prosecutors in the United States for putting people to death. And unfortunately, many of the people that Bob Macy and Joyce Gilchrist conspired to help put to death were done so with these exact techniques of black magic. You talked about evidence tampering, you're talking about evidence mishandling. Of course, everybody knows about the Bryson case, the David Bryson case, where a dog hair was passed off as human hair. And you've got many examples of so-called dry labbing. Now, anyone who covers crime lab corruption, whether you're on the left and right across this country, is very familiar with this practice in which no test is actually conducted. Lab results are simply concocted, pulled out of nowhere, thus black magic. Unfortunately, even after internal reviews were leaked to the press, and a review specifically that was done by a man that I became very friends with and who I consider one of the heroes in Oklahoma City, the former civilian supervisor of the crime lab in Oklahoma City named Bo Shell, Byron Bo Shell. Even after his multi-volume internal review with hundreds of attachments had been leaked, even after the FBI did a brief, cursory, shallow review of just a handful of cases, the Attorney General at the time, Drew Edmondson, decided to look a little bit into it, found a couple that he determined that, yes, were wrongful convictions. And then after the media spotlight dimmed and public scrutiny died down, just decided to close the books. So there's no central repository anywhere. And believe me, guys, I have looked, I have asked, asked the Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, I've asked the ACLU, I asked OIDS. Nobody has a single repository. However, as I mentioned at the press conference that we were at, JJ, I held up a little flash drive that I have with some bombshell documents that were entrusted to me by Byron Boshell that indicate that the cases that people do know about were merely the tip of the iceberg. And the nexus between the old so-called history, which remains ongoing history, of Macy and Gilchrist continues to this day, because Elaine Taylor, the forensic analyst in Daniel's case, admitted in a civil deposition to Daniel's former appellate lawyer, civil appellate lawyer, Kathleen Zellner, that she was there. She witnessed and she participated in burning rape kit evidence as well as other evidence under the order of Joyce Gilchrist and most likely, of course, Bob Macy, and carting boxes of evidence in live pendant cases and dumping them into a big old hole. That's the exact quote. We've got the video. We've put it up out there on social media, and burning it in a pit. They did this every couple of years. So we're talking about, and if we're talking about cases that you all care about and are interested in that extend back to at least 1996, 97, 98, it is quite possible that some of the evidence in those cases may have ended up in that big old hole as well.
Well, and let me kind of break it down what all you said, because a lot of people listening would not understand some of the things you said. Let me kind of put it in Humphrey terms. These district attorneys, Bob Macy, used Gilchrist, the analyst for the forensic evidence, to rig, and I mean rig, court cases to make sure that they got convictions, not only in death cases, but in rape cases, these high profile cases. And it wasn't one, it was multiple ones, and then went out and made sure that the evidence was destroyed so that you cannot come back in and take evidence and disprove them to completely clear an individual, because all the evidence was destroyed at their behest. So they're the ones who asked for it to be destroyed. You can't destroy evidence. You're supposed to keep that. You're supposed to store that. That's in an evidence locker. It has to be stored in a certain way. They're taking it all out, dumping it in a hole, burning it, and covering it up. Again, it's disgraceful. It's illegal. And you know, when we took Glossop to trial, went all the way to Supreme Court. Now, what is that? Sotomayor? Is that her name?
Sotomayor, yes. Sonia Sotomayor.
I can't hardly ever get that. Now, me and her, we ain't gonna be on the same page a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? But
I know
on this one, she tagged her right. And, she talked about how corrupt the Oklahoma system is, and that, we have a duty to, when we see these things, and it doesn't matter, it's in the entire criminal justice system. If you see these things, you should be calling them out. And we're seeing them from all levels in these, from the Oklahoma Supreme Court to the appellate court. And so a while ago, you talked about how Judge Henderson, now guys, I want to set you up, because if you're from down in my neck of the woods, you probably ain't heard of Judge Henderson. But if you go on up there to Oklahoma City, he's fairly well known. He's the judge that got caught on the nanny cam, a jealous husband who was married to an ADA, an assistant district attorney, if I understand the whole thing right, thought that the judge and the ADA, the assistant district attorney, were having an affair. So he set up the old nanny cam and he busted them right there, and they were having an affair. And so me and another guy tried to pass a law saying that it's illegal for a judge to be having sex with you can't get a good fair trial when the judge and the DA are having sex together and they're both fighting you. It's a little tampered, we'd say. So I tried to pass the law. Guess what? Got killed on that. We did get it out of the House and the Senate killed it. It's just amazing to me who can argue that. But here's the thing. Macy and Gilchrist, you just mentioned somebody who worked in Gilchrist's office named Taylor. Was it Elaine Taylor?
Correct.
And Taylor has carried on just acting as a Gilchrist. What she was taught, what she was learned, she just continued that on. So the other day when we were at that rally, I don't know whether people really understood what I was talking about, but I said Bob Macy and Gilchrist spawned children. And these children were David Prater. So Prater, guess what? If you look at Prater's history and Prater's examples of what he's done, he's just carried on the Macy trait, the Macy tradition, hiding evidence, destroying evidence, lying, fraud, perjury, witness tampering. All of these things are what, and again, we talked about earlier, patterns, evidence and patterns. There's a huge pattern going on here. So those people who said the other day that I got hundreds of, hey, I believe he's guilty, and there were so many witnesses, they didn't just have the two witnesses who got thrown out. Here's where I'm at. When you have a witness saying they went all the way to court and now say, this is the first time I saw him.
Yes.
Does that not show you a pattern? Who does that? I mean, who does
that? Excuse me, JJ. Which case are you talking about?
This is Daniel Holtzclaw's case.
Okay.
Holtzclaw, as I'm pronouncing that right. It's
yes.
Holtz Claw, CLAW, Holtzclaw. And the thing about it is, Bob, they had one witness that said it was a short black man that raped her. And Daniel is what, 6'2", 6'3", and he looks white. He's Oriental and white, so whatever, he's Asian and white, but you could tell a little. He has some Asian, but I would say if he walked in, most people would say he's Caucasian. He darn sure ain't a short black man. I got a better chance of being. I got one of those covered. I got the short. You know what I'm saying?
Same.
This guy ain't short and he ain't black. Either one. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. You got one witness, and Bob, they carried on with this. It's not like, oh, we're not going to pursue that case. The other one never saw him. We're not going to pursue that case. When you see that kind of intent to game the system, to falsify evidence, then guess what? Do you believe that these same people would falsify all the rest of the evidence? Is there a possibility that they would? If you catch them twice, I can tell you where I was at when I'm still a law enforcement officer, but the way we always were trained and the way we always understood, you catch me perjuring myself one time on the witness stand, I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Everything I say after that can't be
So,
trusted.
hey Jay, would that be an example? Would be like when David Flinter's case, he had a guy break into his home, and he knifed him in the fight twice. That the perpetrator, and then according to the DA, he said he said it was. Well, I think David went outside and hunted him down like a dog and stabbed him one more time, and that's what killed him.
Well, Bob, and that's the same, what we're talking about, same thing in these cases. And we've got multiple cases, but let's take this case. The investigator drew a conclusion. He didn't make the evidence, he didn't let the evidence lead him to a conclusion. He came up with,
He made it up.
yes, he may have even thought he's correct. You know, we could have, but whatever, he came up with the conclusion, and then he went to make the evidence fit that conclusion. And so not only did the evidence in David Fleener's not fit that, they made it fit. That the medical examiner lied about the evidence. We now know 100%. We have sent it independently to 3 of the top people in the United States to look at that. They have all 100% verified that medical examiner was wrong. The medical examiner has even come back and said she misspoke, if I understand correctly.
That's correct. She said,
So
he sent a letter to her while he's waiting to be tried.
right. And then if you look at how they interviewed the witnesses and threatened the witness, you're going to give this testimony, you're going to give this, or guess what? We're coming after you. And then withheld. So there was some critical evidence that his girlfriend got up in the middle of the night, met this guy coming in, and knew he was coming in. And guess what? If I've got all this, remember everything correctly, I've got so many cases going.
Well, she was driving out about, I think at like midnight. She decided to go shopping at Walmart, and she was driving out of the driveway.
What you saw
him kick the door in.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Who gets up in the middle of the night, goes to Walmart? That's a little odd, maybe possible. Then this guy comes in at the exact same time. Little other coincidence. Oh, and by the way, it turns out they might have been dating. That's some critical evidence to withhold on this. I mean, that's massive. And the fact that they held that back and then threatened her and she ended up killing herself. And guess what? I mean, that's the stuff we're talking about. That's
like in the medical examiner, for example. Medical examiner had all the evidence is gone. It's not there. Nothing at all, which is against the law. My understanding, you're supposed to keep all those records forever. Is that correct?
That's what Michelle's talking about. Michelle's saying,
Yep.
And guess what? 100% most likely, because this is an Oklahoma City case, 100% most likely the evidence we're talking about is the same evidence that she's talking about, loaded up, taken out, put in a ditch, and set on fire and buried. And again, we have witnesses that have come forward and said this. In fact, I think you said it a while ago, Michelle, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this Elaine Taylor, who worked under Gilchrist, what actually was filmed saying that. She was actually on a review or something, was it? What did she say that on?
It was on a civil deposition that was related to Daniel's case, and she is on videotape. We have put the clip up. It's on my Twitter X account at Michelle Malkin. It's on Jenny's Facebook page, Jenny Holtzclaw, as well as the free DanielHoltzclaw.com website. And it really is astonishing to think over the course of a 21-year career. That's just alone in Elaine Taylor's case, that she could have been continuing the types of practices that Joyce Gilchrist basically got away with. Okay. She was forced to resign, but then she hauled off to Texas and became a candle maker and died peacefully without suffering any of the consequences, whether it be decades of wrongful imprisonment or ultimately execution of the innocent men, all men, who were wrongfully convicted by the partnership of Bob Macy and Joyce Gilchrist. And I'm glad you brought up Sonia Sotomayor, because there are three basic legal principles here that tie together all of the cases that we've been talking about. There's the Brady violations, the suppression and the refusal to disclose exculpatory information that points to the innocence or raises reasonable doubt about the guilt of criminal defendants. There's Giglio violations, Giglio, which was a crucial case involving the responsibility of the government to turn over personnel files of misconduct documentation involving government employees, specifically law enforcement or in a crime lab, or as in the Fleener case that you're talking about, a medical examiner. There is supposed to be a record when there is non-compliance or violations of policy by these types of personnel, and it is absolutely supposed to go to the defense before trial. And they have that obligation to disclose either Brady or Giglio at any phase of a case, pre-trial, during trial, or post-trial, as many of these defendants fight tooth and nail to win in post-conviction. The third violation, which Sonia Sotomayor focused on in the Glossop case, is a case called NAPU, and that is the obligation of a prosecutor, again, at any phase of a defendant's case, to come forward when they know that they have elicited or they themselves have been guilty of giving false testimony. If they know that it's false, they're supposed to say so, and that's why the Supreme Court sent back the Glossop case. So in any of these cases, whether it's Glossop or, I mean, I've followed the Julius Jones case, and I do think the same patterns of misconduct have occurred there. And although a lot of people have given up on that case, I still see the same types of red flags that I've seen in this pattern over the last 25 plus years with this same cast of characters, these same prosecutors, the same people in the crime lab, covering it all up with the assent, of course, of the judiciary. And that's really important. I absolutely agree with your pet peeve. It just boils my blood, JJ, that these people in black robes, particularly in Oklahoma, which is a long history of it. I read a whole book about all of the judicial scandals there in Oklahoma, where they essentially, like, they literally were selling their opinions. Their opinions were for sale. So, I mean, when you have unfinished business and there's no consequences and nobody ever gets behind bars for these types of things, it's going to repeat. And as you mentioned at the top, in the course of researching Daniel's case, I have found other cases which I believe were the dress rehearsal for what happened to Daniel. You mentioned that there's this refrain from so many of the people who have commented, who seem to have come to a conclusion about the case without even looking at a whit of evidence about it. You know, why don't you talk to me after you've read through the trial transcripts and some of the actual documentation from the international panel of scientists who ripped apart Elaine Taylor's testimony in Daniel's trial. Why don't you talk to me then? Okay, why don't you talk to me after you've read the multiple columns that I've done on it, or the multiple documentaries I've done on it. You know, this is, unfortunately, people have just been brainwashed into believing a sensational headline and turning people into monsters and guilty before proven innocent. That turns the entire principle of American law on its head. And, you know, I mentioned that during the event that my parents came here in 1970. The Philippines was under a dictator's rule at that time, and they bred in me, my parents did, a love of constitutional bedrock principles. And so to see them being flagrantly violated every single day in Oklahoma, the reddest of red states, yeah, pet peeve of the year, of the century, for sure.
I would agree. Hey, one of the things you talked about there, Michelle, was, and here, before I jump into that, I do want to jump off on what you're talking about. As long as we have these judges and these prosecutors that can, and again, we're not talking, so Brady and Napu and Gilia and all those, there's really no, punishment. You're not supposed to do them, but we need to pass laws saying, no, that's illegal to do. You can't lie, you can't hide, you can't withhold evidence that would clear people. So one, we need to pass a law because there is no punishment for those, and that's how they get away with it. But guess what? It is a crime to falsify evidence, to obstruct, to witness tamper, to perjury. All of those are crimes, and every one of these cases that we're talking about is littered with those. I mean, it's just littered with those, and we could go after these prosecutors, and when we're finding them blatantly doing that, they're refusing. The other day in a grand jury that I'm working on, the judge illegally, because he was named as a subject in the grand jury, and then he went and picked his best friend. You can't pick a best friend, Judge. You can't even give it away when you're involved in. That's like if you're charged with murder. Oh, let me pick the judge that I want. I'll pick the judge. You can't do that. Ethics 101, Judge. Go back. You flunked it. Get a remedial class. Okay. He sends it to that person. She denies it. We have time to correct it. We correct it. She comes back and says it. She writes in there that basically judges and these prosecutors cannot commit crime. Now, you know, is it possible? I guess if they shot somebody from the bench, they're free and clean because they're a judge or a prosecutor. They can commit crime, and she's covering up, and it boils my blood right there. But one thing you said that I think people might not understand is all of this stuff, like on Henderson, you were talking about the secret, hearings and ex parte. So ex parte just means without the other side, okay? So that's really about all that means. Good fancy word. Just saying that one side wasn't allowed in there to hear what's going on, and that's illegal. You can't have one side getting to hear all this while the other side, that's not the way our Constitution's set up. That's not the way the court system. Both sides have to equally be represented, and so they're leaving these defendants out, and they're going in and doing this. Now, we see it all the time. DHS cases, we're seeing it all the time. One of the big places we saw it the other day, Tremaine Wood case, we saw the AG. Now, you can't make your stuff up. The AG and the head appellate court that was over this, guy named Lumpkin, Judge Lumpkin, over Tremaine Wood's death penalty case, they're having back alley communications, ex parte, without anybody there on a death penalty case that he's setting over. Both these people ought to be kicked off. The bar ought to be after them. Judicial complaints ought to be after them. Guess what? Nobody's doing nothing on it. Just, oh, yeah, you caught us. And yeah, he got it. That was one of the big issues that got that clemency, because even the pro board come back and said, hey, we're kicking this out. We're asking for clemency based on corruption, that we were able to show multiple things in this, that the DAs lied, perjured, that the AG went over there, that the judge in Oklahoma County was working with the DA, high-fiving each other because they had buried some of this Brady information. It's unbelievable. So can you tell us a little bit maybe what was going on with Henderson in those secret meetings? Do you know what was being said? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, I'll share some of those details. But first, I do just want to praise you to high heavens and just keep raising hell on all of these issues. I mean, it is a disgrace that all of these people who swear an oath to uphold the rule of law just brazenly trample over it every single day, or watch their colleagues do it and turn the other cheek and then keep it all locked up. I mean, you tried with passing these laws on Henderson once all of that sex scandal blew out into the open, thanks to many whistleblowers, and thanks so much in part to your advocacy and activism against corruption. But look, why isn't that public? Okay, if there's no transparency, if there's no consequences, these patterns are just going to keep repeating themselves. And there's been no systematic review of every single Henderson case Every single Henderson case should be reopened.
Oh, I
There
agree.
should be, right, there should be a conviction integrity unit in Oklahoma County so that so many of these defendants are indigent. So many of them don't even have an idea that there might have been taint, that there might have been this basic conflict of interest. And so what you only have like 2 or 3 cases, right? There's the Fort case and the Hashagen case. And of course, Daniel is in post conviction now, and how could you not talk about the fact that there was this massive conflict of interest, that this guy was sleeping with the assistant district attorneys while he's overseeing these secret hearings? What we do know, thanks to a local former reporter at Fox, I think it's KOKH, named Phil Cross, is that there was a surveillance camera that was outside of the Henderson courtroom. And there was a clerk who actually had papered over the windows with cardboard paper and tape to make sure that nobody could pry. But what the surveillance video showed was that Galen Gigger, the assistant district attorney who oversaw the prosecution of Daniel Holtzclaw, waltzed into that hearing, as well as the municipal counselor at the time, Richard Smith, a name that I've come across over and over and over again, especially as I pour through these Bochelle files that I was talking about, the former civilian crime lab supervisor who blew the whistle in large part on Joyce Gilchrist and who knew all the dirty little secrets and how to lock them up. As well as the crime lab supervisor who oversaw Elaine Taylor, a man named Campbell Ruddock, and a deputy chief, high ranking, named Johnny Coleman. These are some of the people who were in the hearings. Now, I don't know what happened because the transcript, which you can see a line item on the docket on oscn.net, shows that there's a 347-page transcript of the 2-day hearings, is sealed from the public, as are any exhibits that were attached, as are many of the filings from the Attorney General. So let's talk about that Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, who's been prancing around being the champion of transparency and announcing a public access counselor who's going to help you if your Open Records Act requests are denied. Well, this guy himself announced on the evening after our event in front of the Judicial Center that, in fact, he had conducted a review of Daniel's case, his in post conviction, and it's concluded, and nothing bad happened. Well, Daniel's lawyer, Daniel himself, the family, nobody ever knew about this secret review. It's like I said, it's like, where's Waldo? Where's the review? And why isn't this subject to open records public disclosure? Well, we're gonna try and find out, JJ. And so, again, I just have to salute you and Bobby for everything that you're doing, and particularly on these transparency issues where so many of these defendants. I'm helping another guy out who I believe is wrongfully convicted. His name is Ray Mullins. All of his key DNA evidence in his case, which is very much like Daniel's and was prosecuted and carried out by the same team, he found out after 3 times asking for post-conviction DNA testing, has been destroyed. His basic public records requests for basic documents that are clearly open records have been denied. Denied. How is somebody like this supposed to go and sue in order to get these records when he's wrongfully imprisoned now for more than 2 decades?
Michelle, I want to tell you what's about JJ. They attacked JJ, the DAs, the director of DLC. Anybody that he found out is not honest, they attack him and say, "Oh well, that's just JJ. He doesn't have anything, doesn't know what he's talking about." So they make JJ look bad when JJ has actually done the work and actually found all of this information out. He doesn't just make stuff up out of the blue that something happened. In fact, he cautioned me not to say anything, until we know exactly that that's true. We got some proof. He's very careful about that. And it really makes me mad when I hear some friends of mine saying, "Oh, JJ's just out of control. We lost Michelle. Oh, right. You went blank for a minute." But they'll say, "Well, JJ, he's just doing that. He's just doing that to make points." but he's not. He
Well,
doesn't.
Bob, you remember, and Michelle, when you were talking about this, about Drummond coming out that next day saying I reviewed all this. Bob, you remember when we first got that rape case, and so Bob calls me up, and we've got a psychologist who wants to become a whistleblower. And she filed on whistleblowing and everything. We got it all done, and we meet her at attorney's office, and we help her get an attorney. And anyways, we put together, me and this psychologist, Dr. Lewis, we put together. I'm talking about a packet that shows whistleblower violation and it shows rape cover up. And so we put together, a big, beautiful, like Trump says, a big, beautiful package, and we submit it to the AG, and the AG comes back and says, we have, investigated this. And we knew he hadn't investigated. Bob, you remember the hearing? We had a hearing. Michelle, yeah. You're good. We got you now. You look good. But we had that hearing, and we call his right-hand man in, not Giger. It was Herman. There's Giger and there's Herman. And we called old Herman in and said, hey, did you talk, when you investigated this whistleblower, did you talk to the whistleblower? You remember what he said, Bob?
No.
Never talked to her. I said, well, I put the packet together. I said, you didn't talk to me. I said, did you talk to her lawyer? We keep losing her. He said, did you talk to her lawyer? And he said, no. Well, did you talk to the OMES people we turned all that into? And he said, no. I said, well, who did you talk to? Oh, nobody. I said, you're going to claim you invested.
Is that 100-page information he put back, what he did that amounted to nothing?
Oh, absolutely. And here's what's funny. When we ask you about the rape, you're back again. Hey, Michelle, what I was telling you about, that Drummond actually claimed to do a whistleblower violation investigation for us. And yeah. when we brought his chief assistant in to a hearing, because we knew he hadn't done nothing, so I had a hearing in there. When we had that hearing, I asked him, I said, did you ever talk to a whistleblower? Nope. Well, I put the whole thing together. You never come talk to me. I said, you talk to her lawyer? Nope. I said, you talk to people who filed the whistleblower case? Nope. I said, well, who did you talk to? Nobody. And you're going to sit there and say you investigated. And that's what they went all over the news and said, we investigate. I said, well, how can you get away with that? He said, well, we looked into the rape cases and we found there was nothing on the rape cases, so we didn't need to investigate the whistleblower. Well, now that's hogwash. But then I asked him, well, did you talk to any of the witnesses on the rape case? No. Did you talk to the psychologist who has turned in all these? No. Did you talk to our other 40 witnesses that collaborate and corroborate this information? No. And he said, well, what you got to understand, Mr. Humphrey, it's hard to get a rape case on an employee and a inmate, on a correctional officer and inmate, because it's consensual. And I laughed. I said, I just happened to think that you might say that. So I have the rape language right here. I have the statute. Let me skip the whole thing and get right down here to Section 7, which says that a officer, an employee, a police officer, and it lists them all out, cannot have sex, period. If they have sex, it's considered rape. Now, everybody knows that, and we had multiple witnesses saying they knew that, and they caught these guys, and they did absolutely nothing but cover them up. And that's our AG that goes out and does that, claiming, so his statement that he reviewed something is worthless, and that whistleblower now has won 4 times in court. And we have one more appeal, and then she's going to get sued there. But I hope she gets to sue them. I hope she owns them when we get done, because she deserves it if anybody does. But we have case after case like that, and that's what's going on. The AG's over there breaking the law, having ex parte communications. He's not prosecuting these people that are caught hands in the cookie jar. I've seen him so many cases, hands in the cookie jar. You couldn't get no more guilty, and yet he's refused to do anything. And why wouldn't they just keep on doing? Why would
Right.
these prosecutors not keep on? Why would a judge not have sex with an assistant DA? I mean, nothing to stop them.
Yeah, I have a question for you, which is the discovery of Judge Lumpkin having these ex parte communications with Drummond. That's just, to me, if I were in local Oklahoma City media, I would be hammering this every single day. The lack of any kind of intellectual or moral outrage or curiosity among the fourth estate, the media in Oklahoma, about such things, it just grates on me because it is such a privilege to be able to work in media. For me to have uh, woken up every day for 30 years knowing that I had this power in my hands to help effect change. I mean, in the end, I am an idealist. I am an ideologue when it comes to what our role as people in the media should be. And so the fact that the results of the OSBI investigation of Judge Henderson are just lying around somewhere, who knows, in some vault, or maybe they're in a big old hole, or maybe they're on the fifth floor of some high office somewhere, or in the judicial chamber of secrets, and that, as I said before, my interruption, sorry about the technical difficulties,
Right.
but that all of those cases and all of those people are just forgotten, or that all the unfinished business with regard to all of these other defendants who may have been tainted by Joyce Gilchrist, or the medical examiner in the Fleener case. Come on, we all know that if it happens once, it didn't just happen once. Again, people repeat patterns. It's human nature. It is the history of humanity. And so, to me, what it requires is outside intervention. The Joyce Gilchrist matter never came to a head until it was outside forensic analysts, an outside crime lab expert that blew the whistle. Why is there not a full scale FBI investigation, not only of this crime lab, but all of these bad actors for whom there is overlap in all of the stories that we're talking about?
You know what gets me with the media, and you're jumping on that could be my second pet peeve. We'll get it out of the way. But here's the thing: we had a waterboarding case where a whistleblower came forward and brought forward waterboarding mental health children at a mental health facility, and our government covered that up, refused to investigate it. We had kids that were being molested in juvenile detention. The feds did come in and raid that. We know that was 100% true, but we were telling them before that. So shouldn't something happen, to say, we told y'all and y'all ignored it. You allowed these kids to be molested continuously because you didn't want the scandal of it in your facilities, and now we've proven it. But guess what? Where's the media? Here's what's funny. One of these cases, I think the New York Times may have reported on. Where's the Oklahoma media on these two huge Butler rape case? A guy rapes two women, strangles them, got it on video, and gets 150 hours community service. Where is that? Where's the Oklahoma media? They're silent. They're absent. They're AWOL on all of these biggest grand jury names everybody who's everybody in Oklahoma County. They're illegally closed it. We can prove it without a shadow of doubt. Where's the media? Totally AWOL on all of these. What is going on with the Oklahoma media? And not just what we're talking on. The pattern. This should be a big, big story of it. It's not just Daniel's case, because we just mentioned David's case. We mentioned, Tremaine Wood. We mentioned, Richard Glossop. But again, I'm working on, we have a couple of cases that they executed people that I know, I believe 100%. And one of the respondents the other day when we had a rally was talking and kind of aiming it at me. You don't know what you're doing. And I told him, I said, I can guarantee you this, every case that I've come out publicly on, I've been 100% right and proven 100% right. And I would not come out on this case. I would not go to the rally if I did not believe that there has been massive corruption in this case, enough that it should be overturned. If they want to come back and have a trial, that's fine. But I believe that it warrants, when you have this level of corruption in cases. And again, I believe, as you said a while ago, that, when you have a judge that's having sex, every case that come in front of that judge should be scrutinized, should be looked at to see if that was done properly. And you mentioned an integrity unit. There's a group out there. They came to me. I told them I couldn't carry their bill because they took me off of all the chairmanship. They will not allow me to have a bill. I wear it like a badge of honor, but I mean, they've got me shut down. And I guess when you sue the House of Representatives, when you sue the speaker and put him on the grand jury and sue him for open records violations, then I guess, but we have a lawsuit involving many of them open records, and that's what we're calling them out on the grand jury, all of them, all these government officials, all the judicial, Supreme Court, we're after every one of them. But I do have a whistleblower violation bill that would strengthen whistleblower, and I do have an open records. And the reason I filed that, because I think I can shame them. If they try to kill it, I'm going to put them out on Front Street. If the media will come along. Again, what we had to do is work social media. That's why I'm so trying to work this podcast. I'm excited about your podcast. I just, I think that's the only way that we're going to get a fair message out, because the media sure is not reporting what they need to.
Michelle, we got a report where inmates were being put into a shower, 3x2 shower, and left there for days. No food, no water,
no bathroom breaks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, then when JJ brings it up, they start on JJ. They try to switch it around, make JJ just making it up. But we have information from the guys who were in there, and also officers who's seen it happen. And
you've got the goods, you've got the receipts, and now you
wonder where the FBI is.
Yeah. The former civil attorney that I talked about that played a crucial role in Daniel's case by doing all of these depositions, which are just bombshell and provide new evidence. Her name is Kathleen Zellner, and she's nationally recognized, one of the most winningest wrongful conviction attorneys in the country. And she always said, when I had a privilege of working with her, that teamwork makes the dream work. And that's really what has to happen here. And this coalition of, many disparate actors from all across the political spectrum is the only way that things are going to get done. And I've worked with many people who are opposite of me on almost every single other issue. But they're disgusted by the corruption in departments of correction all across the country. Oklahoma is just one of them. And Oklahoma, unfortunately, is involved in a very secretive deal called the Interstate Compact, which allows them to just basically dragoon people from Oklahoma who are in Oklahoma prisons and then send them out for reasons that we will never know, that there's massive amounts of retaliation going on. That's an entirely different field. But then, I would say that over the last 30 years, guys, that my experience having visited many prisons at the state and federal level now, it's not that it's softened me, but it certainly made me much more attuned to the kind of rampant human rights abuse that occurs. And, I lived in Colorado. I got to see how a so-called progressive corrections department works, where people are actually treated like human beings, whether they're the inmates themselves or their family members. And unfortunately, I have not seen that in a place where there's not law and order, but lawlessness and disorder in a place like Oklahoma. And you two are among the very few who are brave enough to take it on full frontal. And again, it's like, why? So we ask, why isn't the local media more interested? Well, you look, unfortunately, at the caliber of the people that work at the main newspaper there, the Oklahoman, or the main TV stations, and there may be very many good people who have worked there over the years. But investigative journalism, it's like a desert. You gotta snatch onto a single story or a single principle and beat it every single day until you can make people understand, and also get them interested in digging into the facts. Again, when there's a sensational headline, and it's like most of the stories that they cover have the expiration dates of McDonald's French fries, right? It's hot for about 2 minutes and then it grows cold and soggy and nobody cares.
Well, I also think that they're being kind of guided off of it. I think we have a lot of influence by, say, our leadership in our government, Oklahoma government. I think that that they have influenced the media to stay off several stories that would cause problems for all of them. Hey guys, we have ran out of time. Michelle, we're going to have you come back, because I always know that it's been a pretty good conversation when you look up and we're out of time.
Right.
We can even really get started. I'd love to talk about Payne County. I'd love to have you back on and get your views on Payne County. Hey, I want to tell you something. I appreciate what you're doing in Oklahoma, what you're exposing in Oklahoma. I look forward to working with you. Me and Bob will continue to look for the things, and hopefully you can help us on that David Fleener case, and we're going to help you on several other cases, not just one case. We're going to see if that grand jury comes about, because they're trying to illegally kill it, but we're going to put them out on Front Street. If they want to do something illegal, I'm going to damn sure make sure they get credit for it. So I'm going to put them out on Front Street. We'll see what happens. Guys, we appreciate all the listeners. We'd like you to share this. This is an important podcast. Share this with your friends. Share this with your neighbors. Make sure it goes out. People need to know what's going on in Oklahoma. We're conservatives. Conservatives should be concerned. We've seen how the court system can be weaponized. It is being weaponized against DHS. That's against you as parents, grandparents. It's being weaponized against anybody on these murder cases, that they are destroying evidence, hiding evidence, withholding evidence, and again, lying and perjuring. That is criminal, and our prosecutors should be charged. Judges should be charged when they go along with it. So we're going to keep calling them out, and we appreciate Michelle for all the work that she does, getting all the evidence that she's gotten. So you guys have a blessed day.
Thank you, Michelle.